Let me start with something that might surprise you. The first time I saw an upside-down cross, I didn't think of humility, sacrifice, or faith. I thought of horror movies. And honestly, I'm pretty sure most people do. Somewhere along the way, the upside-down cross became this dark, rebellious symbol associated with anti-religion, occult imagery, or even evil itself. But here's the twist. Historically, that interpretation is not just wrong. It's almost the complete opposite of what it originally meant. And once you understand the real story behind it, it actually becomes one of the most powerful and humbling symbols in Christianity. To understand the symbol, we need to go back to the man himself, Saint Peter. Peter wasn't just any follower of Jesus, he was one of the closest disciples. In many Christian traditions, especially within the Catholic Church, he is considered the first pope. He was bold, impulsive, sometimes flawed but deeply devoted. He's also the same Peter who denied Jesus 3 times before the crucifixion, which makes his story feel even more human because it shows that even the strongest believers can struggle. But what defines Peter isn't his failure, it's what came after. He continued spreading the teachings of Christ, eventually becoming a central figure in early Christianity. And that path led him to one of the most significant moments in Christian history, his martyrdom. Tradition holds that Peter was executed during the reign of Nero, a time when Christians were heavily persecuted in the Roman Empire. Peter was sentenced to be crucified just like Jesus, but according to early Christian writings, including accounts referenced by Origen and later historians like Eusebius of Caesarea, Peter made a request that changed how we understand this symbol forever. He asked to be crucified upside down because he did not consider himself worthy to die in the same manner as Jesus Christ. Just think about that for a second. In a moment where most people would fear death, Peter's concern wasn't pain, it was humility. And that's where the true meaning of the upside-down cross comes from. Originally, it was never meant to be a symbol of rebellion, it was a symbol of humility, a reminder that even the most devoted follower saw himself as lesser than Christ. In that sense, it's actually one of the most deeply respectful symbols in Christianity. But over time, symbols change meaning, context shifts, and culture reinterprets things. The upside-down cross is a perfect example of that. Centuries after Peter's death, especially in modern media, movies, music, and pop culture, the symbol started being used in a completely different way. Instead of humility, it began to represent opposition to Christianity, shock value, rebellion, or even something sinister. And to be fair, if you didn't know the historical background, it's easy to see why. An inverted version of one of the most sacred symbols in Christianity looks like a reversal, and visually, reversal often gets interpreted as rejection. But that's a surface-level interpretation, not a historical one. A big part of this misunderstanding comes from entertainment. Horror films, edgy visuals, and controversial art have used the upside-down cross as a shortcut to signal something dark or anti-religious. It's dramatic, it grabs attention, and it provokes emotion, but it's not historically accurate. This is actually a broader pattern where symbols, especially religious ones, get stripped of their original meaning and repurposed to fit modern narratives. And once that new meaning becomes popular enough, it starts to overwrite the original in people's minds. What makes this even more interesting is that the cross of St. Peter challenges how we think about strength. Today, strength is often seen as dominance, confidence, or being above others, but Peter's act flips that idea completely. He chose to go lower, not higher. He chose humility over equality with Christ, and paradoxically, that's what made his story powerful. It wasn't about being less, it was about recognizing something greater than himself. And whether you're religious or not, that idea resonates on a human level. It also raises a bigger question. How often do we see something, assume we understand it, and never question where that understanding came from? The upside-down cross is a perfect example of how easily meaning can be distorted, how context gets lost, and how assumptions can replace deeper understanding. So is the upside-down cross good or bad? The honest answer is that it depends on how it's being used today. But historically, it was never meant to represent evil. It was meant to represent humility, devotion, and a profound sense of unworthiness before something sacred to completely different meanings attached to the same image. And maybe that's the most important takeaway here. Sometimes what looks like rebellion is actually reverence, what looks like inversion might carry intention, and what seems obvious at first glance might be completely misunderstood. So the next time you see an upside-down cross, don't jump to conclusions right away. Because behind that simple image is a story of humility, sacrifice, and one man's belief that he wasn't worthy to die the same way as his teacher. And whether you agree with that belief or not, it's a story that deserves to be understood, not reduced to a stereotype. This content reflects a personal perspective based on historical sources and interpretations, and it is intended for educational and informational purposes only. Different religious traditions, scholars, and individuals may interpret the cross of Saint Peter differently, so you are encouraged to explore multiple sources and form your own understanding.